It's great to see so many of you here. The presentation I'm giving reflects work that's done by Angela Dappert and myself together with Natasha. Angela has made many key contributions to European digital preservation projects. A member of the British Library's digital preservation team, first head of research and practice at the DPC, serves on the PREMIS editorial committee and is editor of the book Digital Preservation Metadata for Practitioners. I've spent 15 years or so with the British Library, where I founded its digital preservation team, founded the Open Preservation Foundation, led activities including the DPC award-winning Planets project. And this year, Angela and I partnered to establish Digital Lifecycle Management LLP, where we focus on digital preservation, but also AI, machine learning, and advanced technology applications. So today we're talking about this work we've done with Natasha at Intact Digital, and you've just seen an example of it. We're focusing on this very specific digital preservation challenge of enabling long-term use of software systems and data. And this differs from preserving digital documents or software alone. It emphasizes enabling people to use, interrogate, and inspect a software installation with its accompanying data. It's backed by a library with software data and knowledge resources required to use it. This is a really pragmatic, business value driven activity that's growing importance to commercial and government institutions, as well as national university libraries, archives, and research institutes. I'll give you three typical use cases where we observe it to be highly relevant. I worked in the energy sector for a while, and their companies conduct large-scale seismic studies to find oil or gas reserves. These studies are expensive, impossible to repeat, and produce large, complex data sets. Sometimes, in fact, it's decades before the technical, political, and financial conditions enable further exploration. You have to go back and resurrect the original systems for data analysis and export. In highly regulated sectors like pharma, companies need to demonstrate the precise basis for scientific claims like the efficacy of a drug using the original data and software. Finance companies may similarly need to explain loan decisions based on automatic systems many years after the fact. And all organizations need to retire legacy systems and data. This is a high-risk activity because new systems mess up data, core functions might be implemented incorrectly, and sometimes this is in ways that takes years to surface. So having confidence that you can go back to the original system and data and really reduces risk and cost. So taking advantage of new business opportunities, meeting regulatory requirements, improving operations, these are high value activities that can benefit from long-term software installations. So the rest of this talk is, I hope, for anyone who might be thinking about ensuring long-term access to software and data. Some of the risks around creating long-term software installations occur in most technical projects designed to deliver clear business value, but these projects and services differ in some important ways. They may be used infrequently, and most of the important use cases may not arise for years. And that means we have to adjust the way we think about how they return value. In addition, they may need to work for decades, which makes them highly susceptible to business and organizational changes, in addition to changes in technology and expectations of users. The risk you identify may be remote or unlikely. So it's especially important to have a robust risk management plan. We recommend a cross-functional team that conducts a thorough annual review with a smaller group holding lighter periodic reviews as escalating risks as needed. We have to consider also there are two quite distinct phases in this long-term software installations. There's that startup phase. We focus on discovery. It's a typical IT project. And second is this operational phase that can last decades. And here the focus is on managing and adapting to change. And we all talk about taking risk related to business and organizational change seriously, but in these types of projects, the risks, they will materialize. It's a matter of when, not if. A long-term access project requires you also to track many risks, so you need a framework for organizing them. And we recommend grouping your risks into 5 areas. You have to ensure that the service reflects stable business drivers and values. It needs also to meet the long-term regulatory expectations as well as licensing demands. These projects have a high business value, but low and sporadic use, and that makes it even more important to ensure that there are good champions and there's good placement of the service within the organization. Even if your organization has the knowledge and skills it needs to build, deploy, operate, and use the systems in the scope for long-term installations, it soon won't. You have to identify and monitor the loss of those skills. So I've listed a few of the many technology factors that introduce risks. Simply identifying the scope of systems and components is challenging. Many risks are introduced by architectural and technical dependencies. The access service itself also provides challenges, and I'd really highlight the gap that will open up between users' evolving expectations and the fixed interfaces of the systems that are in the long-term installation. So these 5 areas provide a starting place to consider the many risks you need to efficiently manage and track over the service lifetime. So in our broader work, we've dealt an extensive set of applicable risks as well as checklists to complement them, and we'll hope to be writing that up during the course of the year. So often these projects will be connected to an old system, right? It won't use the latest technology or architecture. It will have been patched and rewired and rebuilt in flight. The documentation will be horrendously out of date. During discovery, you'll be talking to many people who were involved in those systems, and you're going to be asking difficult questions. And the answers may feel embarrassing. You really need to understand each person's connection to the systems. You have to treat the experts, both technical and domain, right? You have to truly respect their contribution. And I think people often will say things like, well, I have no ego here. It won't bother me. Don't believe them when they say that. It's best to be upfront. These discussions always get awkward. Another real life lesson is around enterprise components. Services like authentication or corporate databases, they make your IT estate more efficient. It's great, but they introduce dependencies. Furthermore, the choice of those enterprise services may change abruptly at the drop of a contract, if you will. So you need to isolate your long-term installations from the enterprise services and insulate them from the effects of changes in them. Many of us have done acceptance tests, making sure services meet our requirements. In the long-term installation context, we should be making it as easy as possible for our service partner to determine if things are working correctly. Be sure that you can carry out smoke tests that they can carry out the smoke tests to broadly confirm basic functionality. I think it's important to note that over time, the balance of knowledge should shift towards the partner as we move further and further away from those old systems. Problems with time delays, I found super fascinating. Systems install clean, all the tests work, but then after a few days, uses or weeks, they demand a license code that doesn't exist. It was last seen on someone's Post-it note. Maybe the original software supplier is out of business. Fixing problems like these takes some real deep technical expertise as well as diagnostic skill. So I'd like to conclude with a set of recommendations. Long-term software installations need long-term commitments. A plan for a decade, not a year. Use a structured approach to identify and manage your risks. Explain the software license, expect that software licensing is going to be ambiguous, and plan to absorb some business risk there. Transfer knowledge to the vendor before you lose it. You've moved on from this daily use of those systems. You don't need to retain the expertise. Plan for the service to outlast your current staffing and organizational structure, and plan for the day that users have lost all familiarity with every aspect of the system and how to interact with it. And lastly, capture and write up success stories and case studies and share them widely. They're the key basis for the future business decisions about whether to continue to run the service. So thanks very much for your attention. If you or your colleagues are thinking about building long-term access solutions, I hope that this discussion has been helpful. And now I'll turn over to the chair. Maybe we have time for one question.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you very much, Angela. And Marcel.
Yes.
One question of your choice.
One question of my choice. Let's say, well, can you clarify, transfer knowledge to the vendor before you lose it? Shouldn't that be transferred from the vendor to you?
So this is interesting. And actually, no, I meant what I said, although I've been called out on using the word vendor in this context.
Yeah.
But so here you are. You're in an organization. You've relied for years on a key software system to do, for instance, analysis and research. Right. That's no longer necessary. You're archiving the system and the data in an environment where people can go and use it. So within your organization, you currently have expertise in how to use that system. Over time, the expertise within the organization will decay. And so you've got to have somebody, a trusted partner really, who will take on the responsibility for capturing and maintaining that expertise in an archival environment. So in 10 and 20 years, someone can come and say, okay, we've got to unpack that. How do we do it? They can help that person to unwrap it and figure out how to use and make sense of the system and the software.